Hello and welcome to Palindrome ASMR. So lately I've been doing a series of videos where I read aloud my work in progress. And I've been putting a lot of thought into this work. It's a lot better, I think, than my 7 previous books. Maybe because of those 7 previous books. So, I've written over 1,000,000 words, probably 1.5 million words at this point, which translates to around 1,500 hours of writing. And it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill, so I am nowhere near master level yet, like Hemingway level, but I am getting there. I have done this in 3 years, so by the time I'm 40, who knows, I might be a master writer. But as you can see, I'm a pretty good writer as it is. I'm probably, well, my typing speed, to give you an idea, my typing speed is 84 words per minute, which is in the 95th percentile of people. So I am a faster typer than 95% of people, which is pretty cool. I think that's pretty cool. It's probably because I've written 1.5 million words, not to mention all of the other words I've written. I'd say the words I've written in my life probably amount to around 2 million, including all my essays, all my chat rooms, everything. So yeah, I'm gonna be drinking soda while I drink this, or I'll rather read this. And last video I used the wrong microphone, because if you look down here, it just says mic auxiliary, and it doesn't tell me which mic. So I have to, in order to see which mic I'm using, I have to go to Properties, Microphone 6 USB and P sound device. That's this microphone. What can you do? Anyways, so, let me tell you a story. I have 2 interesting stories to tell. Story number 1 involves my professor. He is hyper, as just over the roof hyper. I'm saying he's probably the most hyperactive person I have ever met or seen. Real person, not comedy person. He's almost at a character level, like a character of hyperactive people. He is, well, so during a 1.5 minute break during a lecture, I got up, walked out of the room, and started running because I wanted to make it to the bathroom and back in time. And this teacher runs out of the room after me, pokes me in the back, and when I look around my shoulder at him, he just runs back into the room. What? And he doesn't mention it afterwards. No mention of what he did. That's the kind of teacher I have. Anyways, so, I have next story, interesting story. I just thought up an interesting solution to a real world problem. So, in the Crimean Wars, not the Crimean Wars, God. The Croatian Wars? Anyways, Russia had a series of wars, not USSR Russia, like Russian Federation Russia. This is after the Cold War. In the 1990s, they had 2 wars in Crimea. Yes, it's Crimea, I think. The Russian Crimean Wars. And during one of the wars, a group of resistance fighters, terrorists, took control of a hospital with all of its people inside, and used the people inside as hostages. There were about 600 to 1,000, I can't remember exactly how many people, in this hospital. And so, in my book, I decided I would pay homage to this incident by including it as a problem for Winter, the strategist, to solve. So Winter is sitting in a boardroom full of generals because she has been inducted as a general, thanks to her 3,000-year-long history and the record books indicating that she is a very good strategist. So basically, Winter gets teleported into the future and picked up by the Paranormal Investigation Bureau, considered a displaced magical individual. And so what she does is she rips the knowledge of modern tactics out of the head of a general with his knowledge and his consent. And she sits in a room as an advisor, and she proposes this solution. Take a special ops team that can speak the language of the resistance and looks like the resistance, and have them fight their way through friendly lines to the hospital in an attempt to join with the terrorists. And use rubber bullets, fake blood, have them lose a couple members, and have two wounded. Get two wounded people, pretend to be wounded, with fake blood, probably makeup too. And then, when they get to the hospital, the terrorists will either A, let them in, or B, not believe them. And they can do three things to let them in. They could emphasize the fact that they have wounded, who got wounded during the attempt to enter the hospital, quote lines from the Holy Book, or say something that only a member of the resistance should be able to know, but these are spec ops. These guys are good at what they do. They can learn stuff that only the resistance fighters should know. And C, kill one of the hostages to prove their loyalty. And that was like a defining moment of Winter's character. That defines her as being efficient, ruthless. And then I made her. That actually didn't happen in the story. The spec ops were accepted into the building, and this is like a character moment for Winter. She says, I could have directly caused the death of a person, and that could have been very bad for my emotional state. But she's 3,000 years old. She's had incidents like this. So she's already got a heavy heart. I just thought that was probably one of the most interesting and dramatic scenes I've ever written. Not just interesting because it's a plausible solution to a real-world event. In the real world, what happened was the Russian infantry got too ambitious and decided to just storm the place. You can imagine how that ended up. But that was a watershed moment in the Crimean Wars. I think it's Crimea. It might be something that sounds like Crimea. I think it's Crimea. It may be like Croatia, or because what happened is I named one of my cities in my book Croatia, and so that name is taking the place of this name in the real world. You can look it up too. Chechen, yes, Chechnya. The Chechen Wars, not Crimea. Crimea is a whole different beast. The Crimean Wars happened in like the 1800s. The Chechen Wars, yes, in Chechnya. Look it up. Chechen Wars, hospital crisis. In fact, I'll look it up right now. No, I don't have internet. Damn it. I live in a trailer. I don't have internet. But, the Chechen Wars. There's two of them, and they're very brutal. Both sides did not fare well. The Russians nor the Chechens. It is a typical brush-fire war of the late 20th and early 21st century. Post-Cold War. Kind of like America's involvement in Afghanistan and Iraq. What? But, every superpower has its failures. At least it's not another World War II. It's just a brush-fire war, and, you're not involved. But, yeah, so that's the story about my book that I had to tell. That story happens. I'm going to read this chapter, but I'll tell you more about some stories that happen in my book, if you would like to hear the stories, that is. I said this before, I'll say it again, I drink a lot of soda. a lot of water for that matter. I'd say my average liquid intake per day is about 2 gallons. Combining all the soda and water I drink, it's about 3/5 water, 2/5 soda. Yeah, I know, right? But, now that I think about it, my solution to the Chechen hospital crisis might actually have worked. It's far-fetched enough, and if you do it at night, with the right kind of special ops, probably the Spetsnaz. They'd be the Spetsnaz, man. Them Spetsnaz. But, now that I think about it, that might have actually worked. I should be a strategist. No. Oh, by the way, I can say this now, but I've been thinking lately. I'm kind of Machiavellian. Like, I may be a psychopath, not a colloquial psychopath, a medical psychopath. In addition to my schizophrenia, I may be a medical psychopath with the way that I think about things, except for the fact that I generally do good things, and I don't like hurting people. I really don't like hurting people. In any way. Like, whenever I play a game like Mass Effect or Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic or Skyrim, I never, ever, ever choose, no matter how many times I play it through, I never choose any choice that would result in harm to someone. So I always play Paragon, I always go light side, I always join in Skyrim, I always choose the most helpful and the most Paragon-esque choice. Yeah, that's just my playstyle. That says a lot about me. I'm burping because I drank soda. My breasts taste like soda. And candy. I ate candy today. I eat a lot of candy too. I eat like a box of Mike and Ike's a day. No kidding. But it's various candies. You know, it's one day it's gummy bears, one day it's Swedish fish, one day it's like fruit cubes, and one day it's, mints. But I eat shit tons of candy and drink shit tons of soda. Oh, and one last story before I start reading. My live stream, my writing live stream, got a community guidelines strike. It's just me doing this, writing a book, and it got a community guidelines strike. I appealed it, and the appeal went through, and they recovered the video, and they recovered everything, and my channel's in good standing now. But for some reason, someone flagged the video as inappropriate, and I got a community guidelines strike. I appealed it, and in the description, I'm like, why the hell? I didn't say that, but I'm like, why the hell does writing a book constitute community guidelines strikes? I wasn't doing anything else. No cursing, no nudity, nothing in the book, no violence even in the book. What? I'm glad it got repealed, but it only took like 2 hours for them to repeal it, but that's the funny story of a day. Anyways, so the story so far is that Toby has just had a worm burrow into her body, and now it's infecting her and turning into a superhero. Also a cosmic consciousness. She has a boom moment of cosmic consciousness where she sees the universe, which is based on my own experience, to be honest. Yeah, that's me. That's like an homage to the stuff I felt. Anyways, Toby's consciousness gradually returned to her body, though she retained the awareness that she could enter that state whenever she wished. She did not wish it now, and only wanted to come back to a normal viewing of the world. So she returned her spirit to her body and woke gradually, like coming out of a dream, though she remembered everything with perfect clarity. She felt relaxed, calm, and ready to face the world. She did not feel any need to tell anyone, nor did she feel a driving urge to know more about what had happened. She knew that she was stronger and more wise, and that was it. So when she stood at the noose, underneath the town's oldest tree, with a stool under her feet, she understood what and why she had to die. She did not want to die. Her entire body felt electrified. Visions of the darkness to come flashed in front of her, because now she knew what was on the other side. The feeling that only death can bring upon humans was overwhelming her. She knew that there was nothing left for her. It had started when she had talked to her parents first thing in the morning. By the time the sun was halfway across the sky, it had been known throughout the town. By the time the sun was halfway across the sky, it had been known throughout the town. Let's change that had been to was. By the time the sun was halfway across the sky, it was known throughout the town. The girl was a witch. Toby was a witch. She had made a pact with the devil to gain power, and had to be hung, or else the village would suffer dire consequences. Toby did not see any possible consequences as the result of her transformation, but she did know why the villagers acted the way they did. It did not soothe her in the slightest to know the reason for her death, but it helped her accept it. Her parents stood in front of the noose, her father and mother looking like strangers that had just witnessed a murder. They held no sympathy for her. They had not even tried to oppose the will of the village elders. They had simply handed her over and given her to the people, without once meeting her eyes or speaking to her after the first measures of surprise. Because they had been surprised. They had seen her in the morning and not said anything for minutes as they tried to parse the change that had occurred to her. She was now a full-sized adult, bearing the same appearance as if she had grown up normally, but without any of the impurities that normally come with humanity. Without any of the impurities that come with humanity. That grown up normally, but without any... I use normally twice, but I don't want to use normally and then generally, or normally and then usually, because that's generally a bad combination in the same sentence. That mar most humans. That marred most humans. She had been made beautiful. Everything about her was perfectly proportioned. All of the imperfections in her body had been scrubbed away. She knew it was because of the power of the creature that had infected her. She did not resent it. She merely thought about it with detached interest that dead people use. And so she stood underneath the tree with the eyes of everyone in the village on her person. They did not carry any malice, only fear. The most fearful eyes were those of her parents. She knew what they were thinking without even having to read their minds. They were afraid that they, too, would be punished for a transformation. They probably would. Though they might not be killed, they would definitely be ostracized and treated as pariahs for the rest of their lives. There was no changing that fact. The hangman, an older fellow who Toby always called Uncle Tom, held his foot right next to the stool, ready to kick it over when the command was given. "Sorry we were late," came a voice, as Uncle Tom keeled over as if he'd been struck by lightning. A gentle hand began to untie the noose around Toby's neck, and she felt the presence of a person behind her, a woman who had a bright mind like the star that had come down from heaven. Kind of like how Toby could see herself, a burning ball of plasma in a world where there existed only dull lanterns. She couldn't read into that person's mind, which startled her more than anything else that day. Let's get rid of that hat. She was brought down as lightly as if she were a feather and placed squarely on the ground, facing the girl. I'll leave that two adjectives in the same phrase. You know, I used to abhor adjectives and never use them, but lately I've grown to think that abhorring adjectives is like being radical on your political views. You gotta use adjectives. Adjectives are a part of human speech, and if you don't use them, you'll sound very slightly stilted. If you don't use them often enough, if you don't mirror spoken language with your book, or at least if you don't improve upon spoken language with your book will sound stilted. If there's not enough adjectives, it'll sound stilted. If there's too many adjectives, of course, that's a bad thing. But this is an expert technique, and I can call myself an expert because I've written 7 books, even though none of them have been published. But this is a technique that you use once you're higher level with writing. I've written entire books without a single adjective. I have. And they're not as good as the books I've written with adjectives. In my mind. I don't know. See, my writing style is very developed, and I use it because it works. I don't try to change it. I don't want to make any changes to my writing style. Not because I'm proud of it, but because I think any change now would topple, would do more harm than it would do good. I believe that when you write, it has to flow. And for it to flow, you can't restrict it. For writing to be good, very good, like 5 stars good, it has to come from the heart. And it can't be manufactured. And by that I mean instinct and intuition are your friend when you write. If you've read a lot. Once you get to a higher level, instinct and intuition are your friend. I've been through all of the phases of writing. I've been through not using adjectives, not using adverbs, not using only nouns, verbs, and articles. I wrote a 60,000 word manuscript using only nouns, verbs, and articles. I've done that. I've been there, but I'm on the other side, and I say, use those adjectives. If you feel like you can't say anything better, if you feel like you can't say anything, say what you need to say without an adjective, use an adjective. It's better to be concise and effective than it is to be verbose. Because replacing an adverb, is difficult, and it smacks of overwriting, which is to say, writing that is overly prosaical. That's a problem in books. It jars the reader from their reading. Okay, anyways, facing the girl. She was about Toby's height, stunningly beautiful, with perfect proportions too good to be true, and a figure that was statuesque and like the carving out of the imagination of a master artisan. And Toby understood that this was how she was supposed to look. Like this, beautiful beyond comparison, so pretty that she had to be a witch. She knew what to do without anyone saying anything, and began to walk away from the villagers, who were gathered in a spectacle, their mouths gaping and open, watching with incredulous expressions on their faces. Toby's mother collapsed to the ground and began to sob. Her father wrapped his arms around her mother, refusing to look Toby in the eye. The girl who had saved her placed her arm on Toby's shoulder. "They are no longer your parents," she said. Her face showed empathy, and Toby knew that this same process had happened to her, too. She was familiar with the feeling. Toby knew it. Uncle Tom struggled to his feet about 10 meters away from where Toby stood. The girl who had saved Toby held out her hand. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." "Witch," said Uncle Tom as he began to lumber towards Toby and the girl. Toby knew what he had in his hands even before he showed it. She knew what Uncle Tom was going to do. She started to stumble backwards, but her new body got in her way and caused her to fall to the ground on her tailbone, supporting herself with her hands. Uncle Tom sprinted the last few meters and raised a knife over his head with a clear intent to kill. The knife simply glanced over Toby's body. Toby reacted before she could think and kicked at Uncle Tom with both feet. There was a moment of slow motion where Uncle Tom's body was completely distorted in ways that Toby never thought possible, and then half a second later he was embedded half a meter deep in the stone wall in the building. Let's make that a meter. She's more badass that way. Embedded a meter deep in the stone wall of a building on the other side of the village. He was dead. Toby knew it, and there was no doubt about that fact. His mind light had been extinguished even before he landed. The girl who had saved her winced. "That's going to leave a mark?" She glanced down at Toby. "I'm sorry, but we have to go. There are people after us." "Monster." Toby heard that whisper, and for a second she wasn't sure who it had come from. Then she knew it. It was her mother. Her mother was calling to her. "Monster. Witch. You killed him." Toby collapsed and began to sob. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know. I didn't mean to kill him." The girl who had saved her sighed, and then picked Toby up in one arm and slung her over her shoulders. "We're going now." She looked back at the stunned villagers, and then she reached out and placed a small flower on the ground next to where Toby had killed Uncle Tom. "For him. His soul will rest in peace now." She hesitated for a moment, and for a second Toby thought she could read the girl's mind, but the moment passed and the girl sprinted away from the village at such an alarming rate that Toby was shocked out of her sobbing. They traveled so fast that Toby couldn't even get a proper view of the world around her. Everything was blurred. She had never even thought it was possible to move this quickly. The wind buffeted her hair, and the motion of the girl was gentle enough that she could feel every footstep. "I failed to introduce myself," said the girl, which Toby heard over the buffeting of the wind thanks to her newfound ears. "My name is Sarah. I'm a magical girl." Toby did not respond. She didn't know what to say, and if she had said something, she didn't trust herself to say it right. She was still shell-shocked from everything that had happened that day. Images of her mother, her father, and Uncle Tom's twisted body kept flashing past her eyes. She couldn't stand it and felt like she was about to explode with emotion, but she managed to keep it down. Sarah said nothing for another hour, until in a single second she leapt over 50 meters to the right, abruptly changing their direction. "We've been spotted!" Before Toby could figure out what was happening, a laser-fast projectile whizzed past so fast that it left a trail of sound in its wake. Toby could track it with her new eyes. Before she knew what she was doing, she twisted her body out of the way, doing a triple somersault off of Sarah's body and landing on her feet 10 meters distant. Two more projectiles flashed back, and Toby whipped their arms and her torso away just in time for them to miss her, leaving a thundering sound in their wake. And then before she could gain her balance, a monster was on her, a girl with raven black hair, black like the blackness of ink on a moonless night, and red eyes that were filled with hatred and clouded with image of death appeared in front of her with a sword raised to kill. This was no ordinary sword. Toby could see that. It would kill her if it touched her. Before a millisecond had passed, the girl's sword sliced through where Toby had been a millisecond before. Toby was now underneath the girl's legs, sliding, unsure of what she had done to achieve that position. She grabbed the girl by the legs and flipped the girl over her head, using her as leverage to twirl up into the sky. The girl broke free. Let's put that as the girl. The girl overhead, using the girl as leverage to flip the girl over her head, using the girl as leverage to twirl up into the sky. The girl broke free in less than a tenth of a second and kicked Toby squarely in the chest, and Toby blasted several kilometers across the open plain in less time than she could blink. She stopped herself by cutting a meter-deep trough in the sod with her left hand. It was half a kilometer long when she had finished. The girl was 3 kilometers away, and Toby could see every feature of hers clearly and sharply. On the girl's face. Toby could see every feature of the girl's face. The girl was 3 kilometers away, and Toby could see every feature of the girl's face clearly and sharply. In 2 seconds, she was on her. The raven black hair streamed behind her like a coat-tail, and Toby barely managed to get out of the way before the sword split the air where she had been. The girl flipped over Toby's head, slicing with her sword, and the ground parted like someone had just pulled the very fabric of the earth apart. And then Sarah was upon her, spinning and fighting with the speed of a lightning bolt and the ferocity of an elephant tiger. Toby's eyes could just barely follow the motion, even though they were so sharp that the supersonic bullets traveled as fast as lazy flies to her. Then after about a sixth of a second, the two broke contact. The raven-haired girl had Sarah at the tip of her sword. The moment lasted a fifth of a second before the raven-haired girl got struck. But it was a moment of hesitation too long, because Toby was in and out of the fight like a flash with Sarah on her back. Now it was Toby's turn to carry Sarah. They pulled away from the raven-haired girl as fast as Toby could move, but the raven-haired girl did not give chase. She simply stood her ground next to the crater where there had once been grass and then watched them run away. When they were far enough that Toby was comfortable they weren't in danger, she spoke to Sarah. "Who was that?" "Our enemy," said Sarah. Toby knew better than to ask anything more. She understood that what had happened had been a brush with death closer than the one she had experienced just an hour before. The raven-haired girl was still watching them. Toby knew, but since they had gotten this far away, she doubted that the raven-haired girl would chase after them. "Access the network," said Sarah. She jumped off Toby with a pirouette and landed gracefully on her feet. "Or you don't know how to do that yet, do you?" Toby said nothing. "Feel the energy coursing through your body," said Sarah. Toby delved into herself and found the rushing torrent of power that she had encountered the night before. "What do I do with it?" she said. "Access it." Toby tried to access it, but couldn't figure out how. It was simply too large. Sarah tapped her foot pensively on the sod. "All right, we're going to have to rewire your magic circuits, it looks like. Don't worry, pretty much everyone has to do that when they first start out." She looked back towards where the raven-haired girl had been. For the first time, Toby noticed Sarah's long hair, long and blonde, and thought to herself that it was beautiful. So was the hair of the raven-haired girl. She wondered if her own hair was that beautiful now. It probably was. Sarah looked towards the north. "That way lies our destination." She put her body in a ready stance. 200 clicks. It'll take about half an hour at half speed. Are you ready?" Toby nodded, and the two of them took across the landscape, through the open plains, and then into a forest where they danced around the trees without losing any forward speed, even though there was no space for open running. Moving this way was the most natural feeling Toby had ever felt. She knew she was now very powerful. How powerful she didn't know, but she was ready to learn. Sarah put up her hands. "Wait!" They both stopped within a second, plowing troughs in the ground with their feet. Toby couldn't see what was going on through the trees, but she could hear. Bandits. They were attacking caravan. "It's our job to help at times like these," said Sarah. "That's what magical girls know all about. You'll learn sooner or later." Sarah and Toby crept up through the main road through the underbrush without making a single noise. Their footsteps as light as those of an experienced woodsman on his best day. They came up to the opening between the trees, and Toby caught sight of a group of armed men battling in the open. The caravan had guards. It looked like 6 of them, but there were over 20 bandits, and the guards were losing. Bad. Sarah held up her hand. When I gave the signal, there was a 2-second pause. Then Sarah whistled, and both the magical girls sprung out of the forest. "No killing," said Sarah, as they sprung through the trees. "Not now." Toby understood. She was just now getting used to the power of her new body, and she knew she could control it just enough to stun the bandits without killing them. Toby flashed through the fighting warriors without stopping, tapping each bandit she met with a single finger on their neck. Each one collapsed to the ground without a sound. When all 20 bandits were down, Toby stopped in front of the caravan guards. They looked at her with a surprise that was natural, and by reading their minds, Toby could tell that they have absolutely no idea who she was. Then she caught sight of something behind her. A huge club flashed down towards her, faster than it should have been able to. It was an ogre, a massive ogre one. The ogre grabbed an unconscious bandit by the feet and held it up to the air, and then swung it away without a second thought. Him. Yeah. And then swung him away without a second thought. Toby backed away. "Sarah," she said. Sarah was sitting beside the road, her hands on her chin. "It's my job to train you, as a matter of fact. This is a good start." The ogre roared, and the guards of the caravan shied away, and they dropped their weapons and ran. The ogre charged forwards with its club raised. It swung once, mightily, and split the entire caravan in two, just as Toby dodged out of the way. "Hit it," said Sarah. The ogre grunted and aimed for Toby once more. Toby felt a flash of adrenaline, and then she leapt up and punched the ogre in the gut. The ogre, which was 3 times as tall and 100 times heavier, flipped backwards and plowed a 20-meter-long furrow in the ground. It was dead before it stopped moving. Sarah stood up and brushed her hands off on her pants. That was your first lesson. You are strong now." She smiled and extended her hand to Toby. "Welcome to the Magical Girls. Sorry you had to have a fight with the Gothics right after your recruitment. And also bandits. You've had a tough day." Toby finally felt the lock come off of her mind. She could think now, and speak. It was like before, like she was in a clouded state of incredulous blindness. She hadn't been able to react properly. "What's a magical girl?" she asked. Sarah laughed. "You should know by now." She reached out her hand. "Come, the commander is waiting for you." Anyways, that's it. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments about what I just read, or if you have any suggestions, or if you want more stories or whatever, just tell me in the comments. Tell me in the comments. Catch you later. I'm pretty hyper today.